Hi folks, Tim Newman with Lite Studios, and it's time for installment number 2 of A Shot a Day 2019. In this picture here, we're looking at a mass transit train helicoil as the train makes its rise up and over the Freedom Bridge in Tokyo, Japan, crossing from the inner to the outer harbor area of the city. This shot I'm really happy with, and I'm really excited to kind of talk through how this shot was captured. First, let's take a look at our exposure settings. And you can see here that I used an ISO of 1250 and a shutter speed of 1.6 seconds. There's an interesting trade-off happening here, especially considering this was shot in manual exposure mode, of moving ISO up and down to get a shutter speed that I want to work with. If the shutter speed is too long, the lines become too blurred and not very clear. If the shutter speed is too short, we get very short lines and we don't get that impact that we see in the image here when we're looking at it. So this was a trade-off between moving ISO up and down until I was able to realize the shutter speed I wanted. The aperture here is f11, very purposeful selection here in aperture. I wanted some really nice depth of field, but I wanted to stay out of that f16 that stars specular highlights in the background. And you can see here, no exposure compensation, which of course makes sense for a manual exposure. Now, in terms of gear used, the body was a Sony a7R III, a mirrorless camera, with a Sony FE 12 to 24mm f4.0 G Master lens on the camera. Super happy with that lens. I think it does a really great job. No filtration was used here. In terms of camera stabilization, the typical Really Right Stuff L bracket that I tend to love to use in the field all the time, which makes it really easy to mate the camera up to a Really Right Stuff Series 3 tripod and flip back and forth between horizontal and portrait orientation images at will. Last but not least, a Velo Shutterbox 2 remote/intervalometer to take the release of that shutter away from the camera and reduce vibration in the image as much as possible. So let's talk about composition here real quickly. I think you can see there's tons of leading lines in this picture, all running towards the center, and it's important to point out that they're both real and implied. And when we talk about implied lines, we talk about points of light that via movement get connected together and make it look like they're real lines. I think that's an important thing here. In terms of composition, I think we got really great control over light here. I look at the kind of orange versus blue hour background, and I think pretty decent complementary color set. And though it's subtle, there's a real nod to rule of thirds here, both in the horizontal divisions of the picture and in the vertical divisions of the picture. One last thought before we leave composition. This shot was very carefully planned out. We actually went out and ran the subway line during the day to visualize this shot in advance and think about it. And then as we got close to blue hour, we made sure we got to the train station early enough so that we could sit in the very last car of the train, which gave us 2 shots of this, one going away through this helix and one coming back through this helix. And we shot it both directions, a variety of different ways, until we really settled on what I think was the best image out of maybe the 30 that we took while we were out there. I really hope that this gives you some insight into how we put this shot together. I certainly appreciate you tuning in today. Remember, look down there below this video and find that subscribe button. Our plan is to bring one of these to you every day of the year. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, as we always say, learning equals skills, practice equals mastery. We'll see you out there.